Doesn't Archie look nice today? But he's got a big mouth. I mean, it's bad enough I spit my teeth out, but for you that didn't know that, he's going to tell you about it, you know. Oh, thanks a lot, Archie. Well, it's good to see everybody. I want to ask the church a question, and this isn't business meeting night or anything like that, but some people of the church, since it's the 4th of July, and they want to be with their families, and instead of having church tonight, they want to have just family devotions. A lot of people are out of town, and either way, it's fine with me. As long as people will have their family devotions, that's fine. But I just didn't know what everybody wanted to do. I didn't know how many would be back tonight anyway. How many was planning to be with family tonight anyway or be gone? Or how many will be honest about it? Yeah, all right. Yeah. So it's just whatever you want to do. It doesn't matter. So I guess we just vote. How many want to just be with your families and have family devotion? Raise your hand tonight. 2 of you, 4 of you. How many want to have service tonight? Okay, that's fine. All right, then I expect to see each and every one of you that didn't raise your hand here tonight. All right. I started to ask somebody something. If I promised everybody a $1,000 bill that was here tonight, how many would you be here? Then I'd just tell them, well, I'm not going to, but you don't have an excuse for not being here, you know. Turn, if you will, in your Bibles to the 11th chapter of Romans. The 11th chapter of Romans. I went to the doctor and got a complete physical this last week. I've still got to go Tuesday and have a stress test. They're going to put me on a treadmill. But all of the tests that have come back, all of the blood tests and, of course, the heart test that they gave me and the blood pressure and everything was just excellent. He said I was disgustingly healthy. He said the tests were like equivalent to someone 25 years old. And so I felt good about that. But he took 3 moles off my back, and one of them he believes is melanoma cancer. So be praying about that. I'm supposed to get the results back on it the first part of the week. And if it is, he said I'd have to go in the hospital, and he said they'll cut a place out about this big and about that deep. And but be praying about that. I pray that it isn't. I pray that it isn't. It wouldn't be so bad if it was back here, see, because then when they draw all that skin together, you know, well, they'd take all the wrinkles out of my face. I don't have any loose skin around here, but I got a lot of it up here. But, you know, you can't have it. Maybe they draw it down this way. I don't know how it's going to work. But then I'd have a receding hairline. See, it's from my head. Nothing doesn't work out right. Better just be praying it isn't melanoma. That's the best way to handle that. But everything else turned out real good, and he explained some things to me, and I didn't know this. Everybody has good cholesterol and bad cholesterol. How many knew that? Well, he said somebody in their 20s, if they're healthy, their good cholesterol is 31. And he said mine is 55. And my overall cholesterol is real low, but he said the fact that part of it is the 55. He said 20-year-olds would love to have my cholesterol. And he said that if I'm not run over by a truck, I ought to live to be 110 years old. I said, well, you don't know my wife. You don't need a truck. She'll do it. 11th chapter of Romans, 33rd verse. This morning, Susie was getting ready. She said, what are you going to preach on this morning? I said, it's a surprise. She said, that means you don't know either, huh? Well, a lot of times that's the case. I said, no, I know what I'm going to preach on if the Lord will let me preach on it, because he has changed my sermon a lot of times, but I don't like to tell it. And the reason I don't, Charles Spurgeon said one time, he said, first time you preach a sermon, it's a sermon. The second time you preach it, that same sermon, it's a sandwich. And then the third time you preach it, it's stew. You know, and that's kind of the way it is. Like if I go through a sermon telling her what I'm going to preach and bring out the points, well then it's not, I've delivered it, and there's no, I don't feel the excitement of it. I don't, and so it just kind of takes away, I think, from my enthusiasm, my energy when I do that. And so now you'll understand why I wouldn't tell you what I was going to preach on this morning. The 33rd chapter. And what I want to preach on this morning is the wisdom of God and the wisdom of man. The wisdom of God and the wisdom of man. The Apostle Paul here in the 33rd verse, and all of us have experienced this at times. There's been times when we're just overwhelmed. Have you ever been just overwhelmed? When you think of the love of God or the majesty of God, you're just overwhelmed. There's just no words to express what you're really feeling, or God has blessed you in a special way that you can't convey to somebody else. You just kind of like Paul when he was caught up to the third heavens and said, I heard things that's unlawful to utter. In other words, there's no language that I could tell you what it was and how wonderful it is. This is another one of those instances where he just says, oh, the depth of the riches, both of the wisdom and knowledge of God. How unsearchable are his judgments and his ways past finding out. He's overwhelmed by the wisdom of God. Turn, if you will, now to Proverbs, the 28th chapter. I'm sorry, Job, the 28th chapter. And man is a wonderful creation. Man, God created man, put man over the works of his hand. It's amazing what man has the capabilities of doing. It's just amazing what the brain power that God has given man, and please keep in mind that man only operates, I believe they said a genius only uses about 13% of his mental ability. But we know before the fall that evidently Adam had all 100% of his mental capacity. Because stop and think about it, God had all of the animals come before Adam. Now there's thousands and thousands of animals, there's thousands and thousands of different species of birds, of fish, of insects, of all of those things. And Adam not only named all of God's creatures, but keep in mind he had to make up names for them. Isn't that something? You know, now when you name your children, you don't usually just make up a name. You know, it'll always be some name you've heard before. You know, like you don't name them like Pyrumpty. You know, I think that's a cute name for a little boy. In fact, Wayne and I wanted to name his grandson Thurston Pyrumpty, didn't we? Didn't work. But anyway, Adam named all those thousands of animals. He had the mental capacity to do that. But what's more, he had the ability to remember all those different species by name and pass them on. Isn't that amazing? But still, even though man operates somewhere between 8 and 10% of his mental capacity, he still has a lot of wisdom or ability. I'd rather just use the word ability than wisdom. Now, notice something. Job here is talking to his three friends, and he says that you're doing a lot of talking, you're doing a lot of philosophizing, but there is absolutely no wisdom in what you're saying. So now let's get into that. And he begins talking about the abilities of man, the wisdom of man, if you want to use the term wisdom, but the abilities of a man and the achievements of man. Please keep in mind that Job is the oldest book, believed to be the oldest book in the Bible. Way back in Job's day, look what man was able to do. He said, surely there is a vein for silver and a place for gold where they shall find it. Iron is taken out of the earth, and brass is molten out of the stone. He setteth an end to darkness, and searcheth out all perfection, the stones of darkness, and the shadow of death. In other words, man, way back then, had the ability to dig mines deep down in the ground, which is, he called the regions of the shadow of death, in utter darkness, way back then, and find precious stones. I remember when I was in Colorado, I knew nothing about mining whatsoever. I was in Colorado, and I went up on Yankee Boy Basin. They call it Yankee Boy Basin. I took one of those Jeep trips up there. Scared me to death. The Jeep was, I don't know, like 6 foot wide, and the road was only 4 foot wide. You know, it seemed like it was just straight down. But they had a lot of old abandoned mines up there, but he told how they mined, and I would never have thought of this, but they bring out the iron ore, and they have to pulverize that rock, and he went on to tell how they get the iron out of the rock, and they knew that way back there, and he said they would dig tunnels way down. Now notice, the flood breaketh out from the inhabitant, even the waters forgotten of the foot. They are dried up, they are gone away from men. All right, now notice what he says, even back then they were able to do. As they would dig those shafts way down in the ground, naturally they would hit springs of water. And even back then, they knew how to shore those up, dry those up, and pump the water out, way back in Joe's day. And because it says it's forgotten of the foot. In other words, it isn't surface water that people would step in. It's water way down deep in the earth. As for the earth, out of it cometh bread, and under it is turned up as it were fire. Now what he's referring to here is we grow our food on top, but when they dig down in the earth, then there's precious stones and gold that glows like fire. He's referring here to mining and the what is taken out of the earth. The stones of it are the place of sapphires, and it hath dust of gold. He says, there is a path which no fowl knoweth, and which the vulture's eye hath not seen. See, no fowl is gone down in those regions, down in the deep. The lion's whelp have not trodden it, nor the fierce lion passed by it. He putteth forth his hand upon the rock. He overturneth the mountains by the roots. Has anybody ever seen strip mining? Look what they're able to do. I mean, they'll go in there and they dig, overturn mountains. They said man back in his day was able to do that in their process of mining for gold or silver or jewels or iron. He cutteth out rivers among the rocks, and his eye seeth every precious thing. He bindeth the floods from overflowing, and the thing that is hid bringeth he forth to light. And way down deep, he can bind up those artesian wells down in the mines, and then he brings the precious metals or jewels up to light. But now notice the question. But where shall wisdom be found? And where is the place of understanding? And he says, here's what he's saying. It's amazing what man can do. Way back in his day, he could mine and go way down and find all those precious golds and metals and shore up the walls and stop the waters and pump it out. And he could do all those things. But he said, where is wisdom? Where is it can be found? Where's understanding? Where can it be found? Man knoweth not the price thereof, neither is it found in the land of the living. The deep saith, it's not in me. And the sea saith, it is not in me. You know what he's saying here? You cannot understand the government of God by human means. You just can't. He said you can dig way down in the earth and they can't find God there. They can't understand what God has created and when he created and all these things. And we know that. They've got a lot of theories, don't they? The Big Bang Theory and all that kind of stuff. But see, it says they can go down in the oceans and they can't discover it. They can go down in the earth and can't discover it. It said, where is the path of wisdom and understanding? But isn't it amazing? Let me show you something about wisdom, and I want to read this to you, and then I won't give you the, tell you where I'm reading, because we're going to get back to it in a minute, then I will tell you. When he prepared the heavens, he's speaking of wisdom here. Wisdom is speaking. When he prepared the heavens, I was there. When he set a compass upon the face of the deep, when he established the clouds above, when he strengthened the fountains of the deep, when he gave to the sea his decree that the waters should not pass his commandment, when he appointed the foundations of the earth, then I was with him as one brought up with him, and I was daily his delight, rejoicing always before him. Now, isn't it amazing? As smart as scientists are. And folks, I want to tell you something. They're not near as smart as you might think they are. You know, isn't it amazing how much credit we give to the medical profession? You know, some of us sometimes think those doctors are God, you know. We look at them like they're some kind of gods or superhuman. But, you know, they make mistakes all the time. I was telling Susan, way back when the bathtub became popular, someone started producing the bathtub that you would set in your home as opposed to just the old round washed up, you know, where people had bathtubs. And the medical association said this is very dangerous. It's going to be the downfall of man. Nobody should take more than 1 or 2 baths a year because it's dangerous. It could kill you. See, now that is science speaking. Now, they have a little reasoning to that because keep in mind, if you don't take 1 or 2 baths a year, you're not going to get the flu. You're not going to catch a cold. There's a lot of diseases you won't get because nobody's going to come around you. See? And maybe that's what they're basing it on. But you see, science is always changing. They used to think the earth was flat. But what he's saying is here, scientists can never discover the government and the wisdom of God by what they uncover or what is revealed to them. Isn't it amazing? And it amazes me how when God created, He balanced the air in such a way that there's just enough gases there at the right mixture that we could live. You see, if it was just pure oxygen, we couldn't breathe it. It'd kill us. If it was carbon dioxide, we couldn't. But God balanced all that. And isn't it amazing? A few years ago, they found what's called the ozone layer. When I was growing up, I never heard of an ozone layer. But God, in His wisdom, when He created and laid the foundations of the world, wisdom, designed all of this that we know as planet Earth and the gases. And God put an ozone layer around that because without that we would burn up. Science has discovered that there's now holes in the ozone and we're destroying the ozone. And man would die from the heat of the sun if it weren't for the ozone layer. God in all of His wisdom. No wonder Paul said, oh, the wisdom of God. Isn't it amazing? Man can do all of these things. Great achievements. He can send out rocket ships, put people on the moon. He can put satellites in orbit. But He knows no more about God than He did when He began. Because you will not discover God that way. And that's what Job is saying. Verse 14, the depth saith it is not in me, and the sea saith it is not in me. In other words, I can't tell you about wisdom. The path of wisdom isn't in me. It cannot be gotten for gold, neither shall silver be weighed for the price thereof. It cannot be valued with the gold of Ophir, with the precious onyx or the sapphire. The gold and the crystal cannot equal it, and the exchange of it shall not be for jewels of fine gold. No mention shall be made of coral or pearls, for the price of wisdom is above rubies. The topaz of Ethiopia shall not equal it, neither shall it be valued with pure gold. Then he says, whence cometh wisdom? In other words, where does it come from, and where is the place of understanding? Seeing it is hid from the eyes of all living, and kept close from the fowls of the air. Now, the reason he said fowls of the air, because in the Orient, they had birds they thought were very, very wise, and these birds they thought were counselors to the gods. But he said, they don't know. Destruction and death say, we've heard of the fame thereof with our ears. In other words, you don't find wisdom beyond the grave or on the other side. He said, God understandeth the way thereof, and He knoweth the place thereof. In other words, God knows true wisdom. Man, I don't care how smart, I don't care what your intellect is, I don't care what your IQ is, you will never know true wisdom in and of yourself or what you discover here on earth. I don't care what what things you attain to. I don't care how brilliant you are. You can't know God that way. You will always come to a different or a wrong conclusion. Isn't it amazing, to prove the point, isn't it amazing that people can spend their entire life studying nature, studying the elements, studying the outer space, studying the ozone layer, studying the balance of nature, and still come to the conclusion there is no God? Isn't that amazing? I'm so amazed, I'm so fascinated and amazed by the human body. It just, the way God designed, no wonder David said, we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And there used to be articles in the Reader's Digest called, one would be like Joe's nose, and next month they'd have one on Joe's eyes or Joe's stomach, and it tells how this parts of your bodies work. The one on Joe's eyes, and Joe's ears, and how that works, and the electrical, the pulsations are turned into electrical current that the brain interprets all of that. And just think about the eyes, which just fascinate me. So marvelous. They're like two color cameras that develop the film instantly as soon as you see it. Not only that, your brain records it like a VCR. And you can recall it back years later. And sometimes people have even been known to can recall the way something smells. How many here can close your eyes and remember what cabbage smells like when it's cooking? Yes. That's not hard, is it? Or poke. Poke. I like poke if I can hold my nose when I eat it. But But it's amazing how God designed this body, and we know all this, but yet they can't discover God in all of it. It just evolved. Now, God says man was created on dry ground, but see, no science comes to the wrong. No, it crawled up out of the ocean. It just comes slithering up out in the mud one day. Isn't it amazing? After all they see, that's the reason Romans says even nature speaks of Godhead. You can look at the creation and know there's got to be a creator God, but they come to the wrong conclusion. All that they can do, all it does is bring them to a wrong conclusion. It says, God understands the way thereof, and he knoweth the place of thereof. For he looketh to the ends of the earth, and seeth under the whole heaven, to make the weight for the winds. Now, isn't it amazing to see, back when Job wrote, they didn't know wind or air weighed anything. They thought it was weightless. But under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, Job says it does have weight. And it says God weighs the winds, and he measures the waters by measure. In other words, he balanced everything. When he made a decree for rain and for a way for the lightning of the thunder, they did see it and declare it. He prepared it, yea, and searched it out. And unto man he said, behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to depart from evil is understanding. Man does not know wisdom, but he can't find wisdom. Now, this is absolutely amazing. Job says, where is the path of wisdom? What path does wisdom take? Man can go down in the earth, he can do all these things, but he can't find wisdom. Is that because wisdom is hard to find? No. Turn to Proverbs. 8th chapter. How many have heard people say you can't see the forest for the trees? Have you ever heard that? Now look what Solomon said here. Doth not wisdom cry, and understanding put forth her voice? She standeth in the top of places, by the way, in the places, in the paths. Listen, you don't have to look for wisdom. It's everywhere. It's crying out to you. She crieth at the gates, at the entering of the city, at the coming in at the doors. And to you, O men, I call, and my voice is to the sons of man. O ye simple, understand wisdom, and ye fools, be ye of an understanding heart. Hear, for I will speak of excellent things, and the opening of my lips shall be right things. For my mouth shall speak truth, and wickedness is an abomination to my lips. All the words of my mouth are in righteousness. There is nothing forward or perverse in them. They are all plain to him that understandeth, and right to them that find knowledge. Wisdom says, receive my instruction, and not silver, and knowledge rather than choice gold. For wisdom is better than rubies, and all things that may be desired are not to be compared to it. I, wisdom, dwell with prudence, and find out knowledge of witty inventions. The fear of the Lord is to hate evil, pride, and arrogancy, and the evil way, and the forward mouth do I hate. Counsel is mine, and sound wisdom. I'm understanding, I have strength. By me kings reign, and princes decree justice. By me princes rule, and nobles, even all the judges of the earth. I love them that love me, and those that seek me early shall find me. Now let's go down to verse 32. Now therefore hearken unto me, O ye children, for blessed are they that keep my ways. Hear instruction, and be wise, and refuse it not. Blessed is the man that heareth me, watching daily at my gates, waiting for the post of my doors. For whoso findeth me findeth life, and shall obtain favor of the Lord. But he that sinneth against me wrongeth his own soul. All they that hate me love death. You know what God's saying? Wisdom's all right here. Listen, God doesn't want you to remain ignorant, stupid, or unwise. God gives the invitation. Wisdom crieth in the streets. See, without God, you're going to come to all kinds of wrong conclusions. Like Paul said about the Jews, he said, they have a zeal of God, Boy, they're very zealous. Boy, they're busy. He said they have a zeal of God, but not according to knowledge. While they going about to establish their own righteousness, have not submitted themselves into the righteousness of God. But, here's wisdom. Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to those that believe. Now, see, there's a way that seemeth right unto man. And here's the way most people think. Because you hear little slogans like, boy, you better change your ways or you'll go to hell. You know. Just, I'll do the best I can. See, that's what the Jews thought. People think, since God is holy, the only way I'm going to get to heaven is to be holy. And that's right. But you'll never be holy. You can never make yourself holy. God has to make you holy. But they're busy trying to make themselves holy. They're busy trying to give this up, or take up this, or attend church more, or get baptized, or they're trying to do all kinds of things hoping that God will accept them. And folks, that is worldly wisdom. That's not God's wisdom. God's wisdom says simply, believe on me, and thou shalt be saved. You say, well, I don't understand that, Jerry. Yes, but I just don't understand that. Jesus said, if any man thirst, let him come and drink of the water of life freely. Yes, but I don't understand that. I just don't. Well, I understand you don't understand that. But you see, the Bible says this. Trust in the Lord with your whole heart and lean not on your understanding, because you don't have any wisdom. What we need to do is come to the place where no matter what you've achieved in life, come to the place where you realize you don't have any godly wisdom. And so then just come to God, and He says, I'll give you wisdom. True wisdom. Isn't it amazing? There's brilliant people that don't know where they come from. Those same brilliant people don't know where they're going. And those same brilliant people don't even know why they're here. But you can take somebody that's got a 4th grade education, dug ditches all their life, that knows God, and he can tell you where he came from. He can tell you where he's going. He can tell you why he's here. Why? Because God gave him that. Folks, I'm here and there's no accident. There's no accident. God had a purpose for my life, and I know where I'm going, and I know why God created the world, and I know why He inhabited it with people, and I know what He's doing right now, and you know what He's doing right now? He's calling out a people for His name's sake, and right now He's preparing a place for those people. We got a future. You see, if you don't believe in God, you're just stumbling along like a beast, and it said, quit ye like a beast whose breath is in his nostrils. In other words, all you got is animal life. As long as you're breathing, you're living. As soon as you quit breathing, you're dead. And, you know, isn't that a futile life to think that when you die, you just die? That's terrible. No wisdom. And a lot of people have high IQs and they're brilliant scientists, but they think when you die, you just die. They have no wisdom. God gives wisdom. And all of His wisdom is contained in Jesus Christ. Aren't you glad to know? Aren't you people glad to know that there's a hereafter? Aren't you glad to know that where you're going to spend your eternity, that first of all, there is an eternity. Why? Because wisdom crieth in the street, and that's what it taught us. But see, a lot of people go along through life like this. They don't want to hear. One time there's a couple of guys on a train years and years ago. They was on a train. They were going to college, and they were talking among themselves, and there was an old man sitting behind them on the train, and they had agreed that they wasn't going to believe anything that couldn't be proven that they couldn't understand. And so, therefore, they didn't believe in God. They didn't believe in creation because it couldn't be proved, and they couldn't understand it. And the old man said, let me ask you boys a question. He said, they was going by, and he said, look out there in that field. He said, there's cattle out there. Look out there, there's goats out there. Look out there, there's sheep out there. He said, would you explain to me how that cow can eat grass and it turns into beef? The sheep can eat grass, and it turns into wool. And the goat can eat grass and produces goat's milk. They said, well, we don't know. He said, well, then you mean you don't believe it? Folks, there's a lot of things we don't know. But if you'll trust God, you'll understand wisdom. See, I've never been to heaven yet. I haven't seen it, but I know it's there. Wisdom told me all about it. I know there's a heaven. I know there's a hell. I know where I came from, and I know why I'm here on planet Earth, and I know where I'm going. And I know what my job is to preach to you. But you can spend your whole life trying to get the answers, and without God, folks, you'll come up empty. You'll come up with the conclusion that life, like Solomon said, the natural man says it's all vanity, it's useless. You gather riches and die and leave it to fools. And see, and to the world, that's all life's all about. Just get all the gusto you can. You just go around once, you die, you're dead like a dog. You know why? They might be brilliant, but they have no wisdom whatsoever. Even though the Bible and the Holy Spirit is trying to teach you wisdom, they can't find it because they're looking in all the wrong places. You'll never have wisdom until you come to Christ by faith. Oh, the wisdom of God. The wisdom of God that He can be just, but still the justifier of the godly. Oh, the wisdom of God that He came up with such a plan that He could make you holy on the merits of somebody else. That's wisdom. The wisdom of God that the righteous could die for the unrighteous and you could be saved. But you see, people reject wisdom. They just don't believe it. They don't want it. They won't accept it. No, I'll do it on my own. I'll make it on my own. I'm good enough the way I am. Well, I give money to the church. Or I'm a good neighbor. That's worldly wisdom. If you want to be saved, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not unto your own wisdom. You say, well, I don't understand it. He didn't say understand. He said, just come. I'm glad I don't really have to understand all there is in this book. Aren't you? I'm glad I didn't have to have a high IQ. I'm glad all that was required is that, well, I believe God. And if He says trust Him, I'll trust Him. And folks, that's the beginning place. When you get saved, then you begin to learn what it's all about. God will give you wisdom and it begins to unfold to you. Without it, it doesn't make a bit of sense in the world. You'll laugh at it. You'll scoff at it. It doesn't make any sense. But I'll tell you what, I'll guarantee you, you'll perish without wisdom. Wisdom crieth in the streets. Listen to what she's saying. She's saying life is short. Death is sure. And you're going to spend your eternity somewhere. Now, wisdom will tell you how you can escape the judgment. And that escape is through Christ. Listen. If you're not saved, won't you come this morning? Won't you come as we sing?